Hardship some unmarried mothers suffered in a hideaway home in Cornwall where they were sent to have their babies has been uncovered by a BBC investigation. Rosemundy House in St Agnes has been a hotel since the mid-60s, but from the 1920s until then, 1,800 babies were born there, many of whom had to be adopted. Radio Devon's Caroline Adams has been talking to some of those whose lives were profoundly affected by this chapter in our history.
I was born here in 1953. My mother came down from Birmingham to have me in secret here and then went back to Birmingham to continue her life. So I was left here and put into care.
Phil Frampton was one of 1,200 babies born at Rosemundy House in St Agnes between the 1920s and the 1960s when it closed.
I was mixed race, and the Moral Welfare Society said there was no chance of adopting or fostering a mixed race, coloured, black child in the West Country. Many people really don't know about this experience. I didn't know about this experience, about the way that young women were treated in this country, in England, even just 50 years ago. And some of the stories are absolutely harrowing.
Jan, who doesn't want to be identified, had to leave a promising career in the Wrens when she became pregnant. She remembers the sense of isolation of the young mothers like her who came to this hideaway home.
One night, we were all fast asleep in bed, and suddenly we heard the most blood-curdling noise that you could imagine. It was a fear, and still this noise continued. So eventually, about 3 or 4 of us got up, came down, and there, just here, on the floor, was one of the girls. And she just had her baby.
Whilst a lonely birth like this wasn't typical, it was common for the young mothers to be pressurised into giving up their babies. Around half were put up for adoption at that time. Life within those 4 walls was hard for the girls who ended up there.
We were very much kept down, made to feel third-class citizens, not even second-class citizens. We had to scrub the floors. That place was kept immaculate because of the girls who lived there.
One of those girls was Bev's mum. She was one of the lucky ones who got to keep her baby. Revisiting where she was born, Bev found it hard hearing how her mother would have been treated.
In this day and age, it's so barbaric looking back, but my mum never talked about it and I would never talk to her about it because I didn't want to upset her, because I knew it's very deep-rooted. But listening to Jan and Phil, I could understand why she didn't want to talk about it.
Historian Clive Benny's writing a book about the home's history and has heard similar stories from the many mothers he spoke to, some of them still feeling the shame many years later.
I know of mothers that have come to St Agnes and want to go to the house, Rosemundy House, to see where they gave birth to their babies, and they've been afraid to ask people in the village how to find it, because they're worried that people would suddenly realise or think that they were mothers from the home.
Phil feels the humiliation his mother must have suffered all those years ago, but with that, he has a renewed admiration for her determination to have him.
It has really enlightened me how strong young mothers were to come here and face up to the type of almost harrowing treatment which they were given in order to have their children. It makes me feel very emotional. It makes me feel quite sad. Yet it also makes me feel quite joyful at the spirit of young women, at the spirit of young people who've survived this type of experience, and also joyful that hopefully young women don't have to go through this anymore.
Phil Frampton ending that report by Caroline Adams. And you can hear more on this story in a special programme. It's called The Crying Shame, tomorrow in the interactive lunch show at 12 noon on BBC Radio Devon and on Good Friday after 1 o'clock on BBC Radio Cornwall.
It's going to be a compelling programme, that, by the sounds of it.